This is lesson 1 of 6 on the Cold War, the origins of the Cold War. Vocab: Harry S. Truman, Satellite Nation, Iron Curtain, Cold War, Containment, Central Intelligence Agency or CIA, Truman Doctrine, Marshall Plan, Berlin Airlift, and North Atlantic Treaty Organization or NATO. The end of World War II saw many countries in Europe devastated, economically and militarily. The United States and the Soviet Union were the world's leading nations. They were superpowers and, as such, had the strength and influence to shape events. But they had different goals, and these differences made for tension between the two powers. A major reason for their differences was that the United States followed democratic principles while the Soviet Union was a totalitarian government. The Soviets were angry that the United States had not recognized their communist government. Economically, the countries were at odds as well. Under Soviet communism, the state controlled all property and economic activity. In the United States, citizens and corporations controlled economic activity. The US was also angry that the Soviet leader, Joseph Stalin, had once been an ally of Hitler. Stalin was annoyed that the US had taken so long to launch an attack against Hitler in Europe. Stalin also did not like that the United States had kept the development of the atomic bomb a secret. Also adding to the tension was the fact that Stalin refused to allow democracy in Poland and other parts of Eastern Europe. President Harry S. Truman reminded Stalin of his promise at Yalta to allow free elections in Eastern Europe, but Stalin wouldn't listen to Truman. He set up communist governments in European nations occupied by Soviet troops. They became satellite nations, countries that developed on and were dominated by the Soviet Union, depended on and were dominated by the Soviet Union. In 1946, Winston Churchill described an Iron Curtain coming down across Europe. It separated the nations in the Soviet sphere from the capitalist democracies of the West. The conflicting aims of the United States and the Soviet Union led to the Cold War. This was a state of hostility between these superpowers, but one without military action. Each tried to spread its political and economic influence worldwide. The US began to follow a policy of containment. This was an effort to block Soviet influence by making alliances and supporting weaker nations. Containment began to guide Truman's foreign policy, which placed the US in direct opposition to the Soviet Union. The United States provided diplomatic and financial help to countries so they could fight Soviet influence. Later, the US used military intervention to keep communism out of countries. To deal with the complex foreign relations of the Cold War, the US created intelligence gathering organizations. One agency was the Central Intelligence Agency, or CIA. It would compile intelligence from the military and State Department and perform secret operations in foreign countries. Truman's first test of containment was when Greece and Turkey needed economic and military aid in 1947. In the Truman Doctrine, the president argued that aid should be sent to any nation trying to stop communists from taking over. Congress agreed. Aid was sent to Turkey and Greece. Western Europe was also in terrible economic shape. A terrible winter in 1946 through 1947 increased this hardship. Crops were damaged, water transportation was cut off, and there was a fuel shortage. Secretary of State George Marshall wanted to send aid to nations that cooperated with American economic goals. The Marshall Plan provided aid to 16 countries and was a great success in rebuilding Western Europe and halting the spread of communism. The United States and its allies disagreed with the Soviet Union over German reunification. Allied leaders had originally agreed to leave Germany divided into four zones occupied by the United States, Great Britain, and France in the west, and the Soviet Union in the east. The West decided to combine their zones into one nation. Berlin, however, was surrounded by Soviet occupied territory. The United States, Great Britain, and France, however, had no agreement with the Soviets uh, that would allow them free access to Berlin. Stalin cut off all transportation to West Berlin. No food or fuel could reach that part of the city. The United States and Britain started the Berlin Airlift. For 327 days, planes brought food and supplies to West Berlin. Finally, the Soviets gave up the blockade. The western part of Germany became a new nation, the Federal Republic of Germany, or West Germany. It included West Berlin. The Soviet Union then created the German Democratic Republic called East Germany, and it included East Berlin. The Berlin blockade made the West worry about Soviet aggression. The US and Canada joined with 10 European nations in a defense military alliance called the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, or NATO. Members agreed that an attack on one was an attack on all.